Welcome to Beyond the Megawatt. I'm Valerie Crafton, risk and site strategist. I'm joined by my co-host Mara Irvin, reuse expert and real estate visionary. Together, we are the Data Center Darlings. We're spotlighting the voices and ideas powering digital infrastructure's future. Let's dive in and go beyond the megawatt. Hey everyone, this is your Data Center Darlings, Mara and Valerie with Beyond the Megawatt, and we're excited to have a special segment this week. We just wanted to pause this week and reflect on where we've been, where we're going, and talk about some of the new stuff that that's coming up in the future, including some of our VIP guests. And yeah, hey Mara, how's it going? How was your 4th of July?
Good. It was fun. Little fireworks, hung out with the family.
Same. Little swimming, barbecue, sparklers. We did red, white, and blue water balloons.
I do have a couple more freckles.
Oh, dear.
Weekend, yeah.
I have a lot of freckles in general, so I never know if I get more. It kind of runs in the family. Might be an Irish thing. So we have been at this for 8 weeks now. Can you believe it?
I know, it's flown by, right? It feels like just yesterday you were saying, hey, Mara, I have this idea. Do you want to do this podcast with me? I don't even think I hesitated. I think I just said, yeah, sure.
And then I sent you my 13-page plan.
Yeah, and I was like, whoa. This is a real thing.
Yeah, this is a well thought out business plan.
And then you had sign here. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, I just want us to be on the same page, right?
That's why when you came out to Data Center World, we met for the first time, and I think when we recorded our prelude to the first episode, at the end of it, we said no going back, and because that's it. Yeah, anytime I am a dreamer. That's the Pisces in me. I have a lot of dreams and aspirations, and I have a lot of ideas. Anybody that's known me for any amount of time, I will have 10 different ideas of what I want to start and what I want to do, from owning an Irish bar to starting a podcast to having my own company. Like, all these were just ideas. And I think it's important just to kind of take a step back to think this wasn't, both you and I both had a vision and a dream of doing something like this, right? And you just kind of have to take that step. That's it. You don't have to have it all figured out. I didn't have it all figured out when I started my company. I was kind of forced to. At the same time, I don't want to give myself too much credit because I did lose my job. So there was that. I guess when you went through the same thing of starting your own company, did you go through that same thing of?
I had been dreaming about it for years. I always knew it was part of the long-term plan, but I always thought it was more of a second career plan rather than a retirement plan. I kind of had a 2-career plan. I never imagined I would be ever not working. Maybe that's the construction in me, just kind of a grinder, but I love what I do. And I couldn't imagine never just walking away and selling off in the sunset. For me, I'd say, well, I'm gonna consult and speak and write and teach. And that was my plan for 2036. I'm a planner. Have you noticed? And so it's not 2036, it's a decade before. And I'm writing and I'm speaking and I'm lifting other voices and I'm volunteering. I'm doing way more now that I've left corporate, and it's allowed me to do some of those passion things that I love. And although I didn't have 100% of it figured out, who does, right? You think you do, but then things kind of push you in different directions, and you have to make decisions along the way. And it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my career, for that matter. But I knew that I wanted to create a platform for others where for those folks that are not on the panel, right? And how do I lift those voices up? How do I create a tribe in my community where I can bring people together and create that what that new generation needs that I wish I would have had entering into the market. And then from just writing, it just felt like I'm a visionary and an executor. So when I saw this gap with children, I had to kind of jump into the children's books. It's just been a ride. This has been a ride. And I was so excited when I met you, and we were just these kindled spirits. And I said, Mara's the right person to ask this. And when we were talking about our hearts for others and lifting other people's voices up, I'm like, that's why it just like it immediately just clicked for me. I needed to ask you if you do this podcast with me. It doesn't make it easier to do it with a co-host, right? It's just one more person you've got to coordinate with. You and I
have to manage me. Let's just be honest. You also have to manage me. So
it's time zone differences, right? It's not like you're just down the street. You're in the East Coast. It's 3 hours of difference for us to coordinate. We both have our own jobs and careers and different things we have going on, family and stuff going on in our families, right? I mean, it's all a juggle, but
at the core, and it's like any friendship or relationship that is able to mature and flourish and grow, you at the core of it, you have to have, I guess, similar values and similar passions and things that are important, because you and I are very different, right? In different ways, but we have a lot in common. I was thinking about that the other day because I'm pretty resourceful, and my resourcefulness comes from, just growing up in a family that we didn't really have a lot at our disposal, right? That was just part of it. But I think being a young mom and also entering the industry as a young mother also taught me to be very resourceful, because when I started, I had a 6-month-old, and no, she was 6 weeks. I'm sorry, I misspoke. She was 6 weeks old when I started my job in customer service at Corning. And you had to be in at 8:00. And it didn't matter if I was a young mom or not a mom or whoever, everybody had to be there at the same time, right? And I know that doesn't sound like a big thing, but just being able to make things happen. I always thought, oh God, my life is over when I got pregnant early, right? And I just thought I didn't want to be a mom this young, but it all kind of happened. And I honestly don't, now that I look back, I don't know if I would be where I am today if I hadn't have been a young mom. Now, I'm not saying everybody go out and make babies in your 20s, but I think that part of that just kind of helped me figure things out. You always have to figure things out. And I didn't like asking for help. I didn't really my family was a big part of my life, but they weren't at a point where I could just go ask my parents for money, or, I never had that option. I was either going to make it or I wasn't.
Right.
And part of my wanting to do always something bigger was never really about the money. It's never been about the money for me. It's always been, of course, I want to leave a legacy. Now I have my kids and grandkids, and I want to leave a legacy for my family and make an impact. And having the opportunity, like and I'm not saying you can't do this and work a 9 to 5, but to your point, when you have that freedom and flexibility to create your life on a daily basis, you actually can start to incorporate your passions. And people do ask us, like, how do you guys have so much time to do these things? It all kind of comes together. Everything is intertwined. And I haven't announced it, but I did recently join a developer, and I'll launch all that publicly soon. I'd say I haven't given up on my Mara Jade Consulting. It's more of a partnership, and it's been able to kind of give me that catalyst. But so I'm doing a lot of things. And how am I able to do that? Somehow all these things come together, and I don't think it's always intentional. I think when you show up every day and you try to do the right thing, and my face is on social media, your face, those things. And so I would be remiss to say there's not part of that, getting that branding out there too, but it's also hard at the same time, because I'm not a people person, and I don't really like being out there. Putting myself out there is tough. Like, you show up on camera every day. I didn't even have a hair dryer this morning. So there's things like you show up, and I do. Sometimes I'll see myself on a video or a picture, and I'm like, oh my God, like I just look like I just woke up, or things like that. But you have to remove ego. Once you're put yourself out here, you have no ego anymore. And there's also the other side of this is you start to realize who really is in your corner and who's in your tribe. And
that's so true. When you don't have a label behind your name, like for me, for Microsoft or Intel, whenever I was there, I noticed the switch immediately, which was part of my passion. And I was watching other people struggle through the same thing, which was part of why I thought, well, you know what, I'm going to start a podcast so that I can give people a platform that they're not given at a conference or anything else, right? And I think you and I even talked about it a little bit, how you and I kind of went through these parallel things in our lives.
We did.
And how they were almost happening in parallel, and the experiences, and it really gave each other goosebumps to hear that we went through all these very similar things that all led up to launching our own businesses at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about, right? Like I had a baby right out of high school, and I had big plans to go to the Air Force. And that was how I was going to get out of my small town. Nobody in my family had gone to college. It was something I couldn't afford. I was like, that's how I was going to pay for college. That's how I was going to go travel the world. And one car wreck later that put metal in my femur. I have the metal from my knee all the way up to my hip. Told me I couldn't join the military. Now fast forward, I think they are now do allow it, but back then they did not, 3 decades ago. And so that just kind of changed my life. And I had a baby right up. And I said, there's no colleges or anything in my small town. And so I thought, well, that was it for me. And I thought I wasn't going to be able to go and travel and do all the things I wanted to do. And so I focused on being a mom and building houses, and eventually escaped to, we'll leave it, the escape to another time, but a bad situation. And I ended up in St. Louis, Missouri, where they did have community colleges and they did have universities, and I saw all the opportunity. And in 2 weeks, I found jobs and started working for an architect who needed someone who could run a wheel and do measurements in the field. and the rest is history. It's in my blood.
Story. I think you told me the story on our hike.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
getting really vulnerable right now.
Yeah.
I think
it's important. Yeah, I think it's important, because I would have to say that for a very long time, I was ashamed of how I got started in this industry. I got looked over for jobs and it was wild. I had senior level executives at the company I was working for tell me to put in for this job that I was well prepared for. And then a hiring manager was like, she's not ready. Or it wasn't even that I wasn't ready. It was that I didn't have an engineering degree, or I didn't have the military background, because those are the two things they were looking for, an engineering degree or a military background. And that's what they built that sales force around, were those two candidates. So, right. But I look at that as it was an opportunity for me. Yeah. And to go back and say, okay, how can I take control of my career? What did I do? I actually went to a company that did see the value that I had, that I could bring to the market. And I stayed with, that was actually Wesco picked me up, but there were a lot of things that led me into that. Every role that I've ever had has been around a relationship, good, bad, or indifferent. These relationships have helped me in my career over the years and kind of pick things. But back to that shame was, I always felt like I hadn't arrived like everyone else had arrived. But right. Then when I really started to get to know people, and I really started to get to know the really people that I would actually admire and want to be like, because there's a lot of people out there that have achieved, and I'm not saying you can't do things the right way, well, not even the right way, but the 4-year college, your master's degree, or you start your family later. Maybe you've just decided not to even get married and have kids. I used to respect the hell out of those people too. I think everybody's path can be different. And I think that's what I want to get across to the folks and the listeners that are out there, is your journey can be completely different than anybody else's, and you can still be successful. And success isn't measured in, we do put our statistics out there on the podcast, but that's not where success is. Yeah. I think the way that I know that this podcast is successful is when I hear somebody who's listened to an episode who said, I listened to what Lillian's story and her starting her own company, and I wrote out my business plan, and now I'm starting my own company. Those are the things that really resonate. So yeah.
I love that. Or I just think that I always have been envious of those folks who found their home in their first career, and they've done their whole career there. And I was just like, that is incredible. I think that's awesome, right? You got to go through life and do all the things. Like you said, you graduated high school and then you went to college and then you started a family and you found the right home and you've spent 20 years in that at that business. You know what? That's not everybody's story.
Yeah.
And certainly isn't mine. I did life backwards. I had the kids, then worked, did college, and then career, and then I had kids again and started life all over again. There's
Yeah.
no perfect formula. And
Mhm.
had I let society tell me what my path should look like, I would have not ended up in construction because I had every single element around me telling me the opposite, that I didn't belong. And it was all I wanted to do. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And I don't consider myself someone who, I'm just really passionate about what I do and I love it and I want to spread the word so that other people can maybe find a path to it if they don't know what they want to do. There's so many options in this industry.
Yeah.
But I really love that our journeys have brought us to this point and that we can really appreciate what we have when we do have it, coming from absolutely nothing. Like you said, your family didn't have much. My dad was a single dad, and being a construction worker, sometimes people didn't pay him and we'd end up not having money for food or anything like that. And what that taught me was, had it not been for the kindness of strangers,
Mhm.
my family probably wouldn't have food to eat. We found ourselves in homeless shelters more often than I'd like to say. But someone sponsored that shelter, right? And what I learned was, you don't really need to know someone on such a deep level to support them and help them. And I don't necessarily need to be able to have to get something from you either.
Yeah.
And so when you do go out and do something, people want to call it brave or whatever, it's not easy. Otherwise, everybody would do it, right? Everybody would jump off
Yeah.
this cliff and say, "I'm starting my own business,"
Yeah.
and everybody would do that, right? But you don't.
And I was just going to
Or
say too,
you, yeah.
yeah, I was just going to say it doesn't have to translate into starting your own business. You can do everything that we're doing for a corporation if the environment is right. And that's why I just applaud leaders who hire smart, hire people that are smarter than them, and then don't try to control them and change them into something that they aren't. Like, hey, there's wonderful, smart, intelligent, brilliant people out here. And I think the AI companies and a lot of the startups get it right. Some of them still get it wrong, but you still have the opportunity to pursue your passions, find meaningful work. Because if you, and I still have friends and people that are really close to me that their job is everything, right? And I want to see them find a better balance and realize that at the end of all of this, whatever you believe in, faith, or if you don't have a faith or whatever that is, if at the end of this you have to look back and you have to say, was all of this worth it, right? And I think there's a way to make your work meaningful with or without starting your own company. You can do it at the company that you're at now. It does require you to, I would say, just be a little bit more courageous. My yoga session, I think it was 2 Saturdays ago, was Pride Awareness Month. And our teacher just kind of said, hey, what is the last time that you were in a room that you should have spoken up for somebody else and you didn't? Or when did you have opportunities to actually say something? And maybe you're advocating for yourself. Maybe it's not even a person in the room. Oscar Gross and I talked about this in Atlanta the other day. That's one thing that we can do for those around us that are outnumbered, is speaking up for them, right? Yep. And yeah, so those are I think we have opportunities today to do things in a more meaningful way, that we just have to focus, right? And just try to, I think the biggest thing is the confidence. It's scary, right? To put yourself out there.
It is really scary to put yourself out there. We've had a few guests on here who have said, "Oh, I don't do that in my company. Let me pass you off to the person who does speak on the podcast and get on panels." Yeah. And I said, "Oh, no, no, no. We don't want them. They have their platform.
Well, that's
we
right.
want to lift your voice up." And they're like, "Well, I don't know if I know enough to kind of go on a podcast and speak about it." I was like, "More than you think you do."
Yeah.
right? And just giving them the confidence to go out and just start speaking. That same person who said that to me the other day said to me, I actually want to do it again.
I love that.
They're like, I'm actually more comfortable at the idea of getting on a panel and maybe go speaking at a conference.
Yeah, but we do have a guest that we've got plans for that he really quickly was just like all over. Everybody wanted him on every podcast and he was on panels. And as he started to build out his teams, I saw something really beautiful happen. And he started passing the mic and he started putting other people on the panels. Yeah. And I think it was twofold. I think you can get burnout really fast doing a lot of this. And you and I have to reset, and it takes a lot to talk. It takes a lot of energy and all the things. So I think that was part of it. But I think at the same time, he realized, hey, it's not just me here. I'm building a company. There's a lot of people here. There's a lot of voices. Yeah. And I think that that's a really good example for others too, that if you're in a position to speak, use that as an opportunity to lift other people up. And it doesn't have to be starting a podcast. It could be, like you said, somebody reaches out to you to speak and you spoke 12 times this year. There might be somebody in your organization that would be great that you give them the opportunity. We've done that in the Infrastructure Mason Women's Luncheons. We put women on those panels in these closed room environments because it's less intimidating, and that's a great opportunity for them to kind of get started.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by BCS Switchgear, where power meets precision. From obsolete breakers to the new 15 to 34.5 kV switchgear and low break switches, BCS delivers fast answers and custom engineered solutions that keep mission critical systems online. I love that. And it's interesting that you say that, because when I asked some of the conference folks who plan for who goes on the panel, it says, what's keeping these panels from not having at least one woman? And they said, we ask them, and they keep sending the same person every time. And so to your point, you need to step back and say, is it the same type of person everyone's hearing from, or should we send different perspectives out there?
We need to change the rules too. We have too many rules that keep women from getting in and on these panels. And the recent one that I heard was, well, she doesn't work for an end user, and we need end users, or it needs to be a paid spot. And we have to stop. I think these rules, until we actually start changing the rules, we're not going to see, and this is not just for women on panels, this could be for anyone on panels, right? There's a lot of voices and a lot of people that we need to hear more from that are part of the contractors and even the technology companies that are actually doing the R&D, and they're in the pilots and they're doing all these things, and we actually need them on the panels.
Yeah.
Right. So
what can we learn from them and all these different perspectives? Because otherwise you just keep getting the same messages from the same people. It's just a different conference, a different day. And it would just be nice to just shake it up a little bit. I get the end user is what draws the crowd, right? They're looking for that primary person, but the entire panel doesn't necessarily need to be that, right? So just trying to create, I think someone said that they were going to require at least one female on every panel. And one of the things I observed when we were at Data Center World was when I had our panel where it was all women, it was, there was 11% men and the rest of the room was full of women. And any panel that I went to that had a woman on that panel, there was a huge group of women there to not just listen and learn, but to cheer her on and support whoever was up there. Yeah. And I noticed that. And then when I walked into a room, because maybe they were speaking on something I wanted to learn a little bit more about, but there were all men on the panel, I looked around and I saw two other women in the room, and I didn't even recognize their faces, which means they're new to the industry and they haven't found the tribe yet. and so I noticed that, and I said, well, I'm missing something, and all the women are there supporting her, but I really wanted to hear this particular subject. I just noticed that none of the women showed up. So it just goes to show, like, that was one of my observations as I went from panel to panel. And I think it makes a huge difference. The more having a woman on the stage creates a more diverse crowd of people. And not only that, but I also loved how they all showed up and championed and supported. I mean,
Yeah.
Mara, you had a whole cheerleading squad in the front row for yours. It was
I know
amazing.
it is kind of funny. And it's Oscar. I hate to keep bringing Oscar up. We need to have him on the show. He's just an incredible male ally and leader in our community. And Oscar said, I was watching you girls in your little tribe. And he was like, I was a little jealous. And then I heard you guys had this WhatsApp group and I was jealous about that. And I was like, well, you know what? He was like, us guys, we're just so dumb. We just sit around. We don't plan anything. We don't talk about anything. I don't say that. I say that loosely, but you know, they kind of just let things happen. And I think women do. We're the home builders, right? So we'll just come in and we'll kind of create these environments and support each other. Yeah. And we support our male allies too. Like if I knew Oscar was going to be up on a panel or something, I'd be right
Absolutely.
up there.
100%. 100%. But that's actually a really great segue into a subject I'd love to talk about. Let's talk about our women's group.
Okay, yes.
Our all women's group. So when I took on the lead for I Am Women here in Phoenix, the chapter lead here, I started hearing this buzz in my ear about how there's a lot of strong opinions about us having women's groups. And that men weren't allowed. And actually, that's not true. The men are allowed, but we do try to create these women-focused groups, because when you walk into a room at a conference, and the whole point of why it was started was to really create a little tribe before you entered into the conference, so you had a relationship, so you knew someone. Because when you walk into the room and you're 1 to 1,000 men, you can feel it's a little intimidating, right? You just kind of suddenly feel very female inside a space and like all eyes on you. But if you knew someone, right, who you can go and stand with, who could help you introduce, who could kind of create that comfort and allow you to just lean in a little bit, or maybe even help you introduce someone that they know, it just kind of setting the tone before they went into the conference. And then we have our women focused meetings. And to your point, I don't think Oscar was saying, hey, we're dumb. It's more of that someone said to me the other day that women connect on a very different level. Like when I connect with someone, I want to know you on a much deeper level. I want to know your whole life story. I want to know everything about you. And just because I really want to genuinely know who you are, labels aside, who you're with aside, I don't want anything from you. I want to get to know you as a human, as a person, and what are your values and what makes you tick, and when's your birthday so I can send you a happy birthday. Like I care.
Well, I like to read horoscopes, so that's why I ask for birthdays.
Well, I do. I think it's interesting. The personality a little bit matches, so I know how to maybe approach someone too.
Yeah. So I did early in my sales career, they threw all kinds of sales books, and I've done every sales class you can imagine. One of the early ones is learning your environment, learning your person, right? So you go into their office and you look at their pictures and you see, oh, they have a picture of their family, or they have golf something over here. And you kind of create this. That's how the whole reason behind that isn't to
storyboard.
It's not about just knowing personal details about this person so you can go blackmail the wife. It's so that you know how to how to engage them. You know, the topics to talk about. And so that's what I say when I start asking you questions about how you met your wife and where do you vacation. And when we ask those questions, you're actually learning about these people and you're learning how to engage with them. And I think those are when we get things wrong, when I see those interactions that don't happen in the right way, typically it starts with misinterpreting somebody's actions, assuming you make an assumption or a bias, or you have a bias and you just assume that this person's intentions were bad. But once you actually sit down and talk through things and you realize, oh, they actually meant something else. I just didn't know this is how this person was wired. I think you and I are going through that. We're so different. You have to really now that I've gotten to know you and I know your why. Now when you project manage me, I know because you're trying to keep me from failing. Like if you can more order and more organization, you eliminate it's like de-risking a project. You de-risking working with me. It's like you can get me through this process.
Yes.
There's less chances of
I care about our relationship enough that if I can create some sort of documentation that says we both agree on this, then I don't have to sit there and misremember, or amnesia sets in, or we forgot about the conversation we had. Like, I care about our relationship way more than I care about our podcast.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we have these clear understandings, and hey, this is something with you. Let me document that. Let me organize that. Let me automate that so it takes the pressure off of both of us. How can I make it as easy and as on you and me as possible? So I'm constantly thinking that, and for me, it's like I don't want to manage it as much as I want to protect, like you said, de-risk more of the relationship piece of this. If that can't stay true to each other at a very core, it all really crumbles apart. So who cares about all of the other stuff? Like,
yeah, I think that's what makes a good manager too, and a good, like if you're listening and you're a people manager, like the managers in my past,
yes,
it really stood out to me. There were these moments where they saw me. There were these moments where I was like, I'm not just a number. It's not just that I sold $20 million for this company last year. That wasn't why they cared. I'm sure they did love the fact that I was bringing in revenue. I'm not going to dismiss that. But there were moments when I couldn't show up. I had something going on. I had a family, whatever. And they saw me as a person, and they just stopped. And they were like, listen, take time for yourself. This is big. Stop trying to skip over this. This is big. Take some time off. Forced me to take some time off. And those are the people that really, I would just say, had changed me for the better, because it also took me out of myself of trying to feel like I had to show up and be perfect all the time. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for our listeners to do that too.
I think though, but I think that goes back to our all women's group, right? Like, that's kind of why we need the women focused events, because we're going to talk about things that men cannot relate to. They've never had to deal with it. They've never confronted it, whether it's being pregnant, going through some of the things that women go through, balancing all the lives.
I will say there are men that have been supportive. Like,
absolutely,
they go to the store to buy the tampons. They don't necessarily have to use them themselves, but they know the drill. Pregnancy, they didn't have a baby, but they've supported a wife or a sister or somebody that's had a baby. They showed up for them. And so I think that does give them that whole male allyship, I think, ties into that. They're learning how to support us in different ways, support women. But to your point, they don't really want to be in the room when we talk about our periods. They don't want to talk. They like to learn, because guess what? It helps them
manage the women
and grow the women. And so I think having them in part, like, I think we can still broaden some of these conversations so that they know, like, I don't think men know this, but a woman goes through so many cycles during a month of hormones and all these things. It's just, it's a constant battle. But you also, from what I saw going through the construction, always being the only woman in the room, around the table, in the field, it was one of those things that if I didn't have a woman focused event to go to, then I would have no other women to relate to. Yeah.
Right.
We do need that.
Right. So that gives me that outlet. Somebody who's doing my job or my role at maybe another company, but just knowing they literally are going through the same things. And we can just kind of have this honest conversation, this open, vulnerable conversation. And it does change when a male is in the room, because we can't really show up as our authentic self, because that's what we're surrounded with every day, all day.
Yeah.
We need to be able to go into a space where I can just, hey, I went through this. They're like, yeah,
Well,
I went
and
through
I'll
that
give you
too, and here's how I handled it.
I'll give you an example. We had a infrastructure Mason women, and it was a closed luncheon for women. And we had a young lady that was actually going through sexual harassment work. And when she spoke up, then eventually we had an open forum where women were actually talking about this stuff. I've actually had male colleagues that this has happened to, where they were actually pursued by a woman and things. And so it can kind of go both ways, where just things are.
That's more rare.
Yeah. But these women needed a space, a safe space, because they didn't even feel safe at work with HR. They actually were, the way that this came up is she was actually now being targeted. The HR person happened to be really close friends to the guy that this incident was happening with. And I don't think this HR person maliciously was like not going to protect this woman. I think she saw a side to this guy as a friend and just didn't think that he was capable of doing something like that. So this went on for like 9 months.
Oh my
We went
goodness.
through this event. She kind of listened to us. Long story short, it happened to 3 other women at the company. So finally, when it got to 3 women, then they started to listen. But women need to know how to handle this stuff. How do you handle conversations, and how do you handle, especially when you feel like there's nobody listening? Like, what do you do? Right. So
it's very, you're really vulnerable inside the company because, like you said, there's the political sway, right? There's the people who have this really bold, loud voice, and everybody just, anything that comes out their mouth is facts, gold.
Yeah.
And they would never be questioned nor asked to back up anything they said. So you're not going to get heard. So just to be able to say, I need someone else in this industry who understands what I'm going through, because they are doing similar jobs and they work in similar environments, because there are so few of us in our existing environment, and there's a good number of us out there, but we have to come together in these groups to kind of get that.
That was the other side of this that I wanted to talk about, is the other big takeaway for us to have our closed women groups is, and being able to have that time together, is we need it, because we can get really competitive and
with
fight
each other.
Yeah. And when we're out amongst the wolves, I'll say it, we attack each other because it's a survival, right? And we're like, okay, there's another threat, where we see each other as a threat. But when we come into these rooms, we actually realize we're not a threat. We're actually here to help each other. And there's strength in building each other up and confidence. And I would say that a lot of the women that have spoken about what they've gotten out of these groups and how much they treasure these times together is, they were like, oh, I thought all these other women were out to get me, or they just didn't like me, or all the things. But now I get into these rooms and I realize I have friends. I actually have girlfriends, and we're building a tribe, and we're building all these things. So I just wanted to call ourselves out on that. Is
absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I've heard women are the worst, right? Or the cold,
are hard on each other. Yeah.
Queen bee syndrome. But isn't it interesting how when we come together and we connect and we get to know each other, we leave the labels at the door, right? We're not selling. That's not what the event is about. It's not networking like that. It's more of a getting to know each other on a really personal basis. And because we really are stronger when we're linked together versus a single link on our own and just floundering out in this world. So it's amazing. Like when you need to have a transition, or you're going through things at work, or you're dealing with maybe a queen bee in your own environment, you can come to a group of women and say, hey, how do you handle this? And being able to just be open and have those vulnerable conversations and get to know each other at a very deep level, that there's no longer competition. Right? I just see Mara. I don't see trying to
I do forget I'm a female. I work with mostly men, and I just forget. And it's because they do treat me like one of their male colleagues, but they also show me a lot of respect at the same time. I just want to say that, but I do forget I'm a female sometimes. But I think the other big takeaway is we're not alone. And we're reminded of that when we get into these rooms with other women, is we're not alone. And we might be outnumbered at work. Most of us are outnumbered at events, especially when we go to these, and we're seeing more and more local regional events in these areas, and there's not a women's group. And when you don't have a women's group supporting that, you'll really start to see we're outnumbered, and we just need a place where we can come in together and not feel alone. And
and be seen. So you want to talk a little bit about where we're going? Like, we have some pretty exciting things coming up.
We do. We have some events. So we've kind of shifted a little bit. We actually got this from the Cloud Run. We've decided to do some pop-ups at events throughout the year. Our goal is to, while we're there, actually be able to interview people that don't make it to the panels, don't make it to the stage. Not saying that we won't. We're going to have guests. We're going to have folks that we interview that do get opportunities to speak at these events, but we're going to be working the crowd. You can look for us at a couple events coming up. You're going to be at the WIMCO Tech Summit.
I will be at WIMCO's Tech Summit.
I do have a personal conflict, so I may be able to still make it. I'm going to try to work that out, but we've got the WIMCO Tech Summit. What are the dates for that?
It's the end of July. I don't know the dates off the top of my head.
We'll have the
week of the week of the 21st. And then first part of September will be Yada. We're both going to be there.
Yeah, July 22nd to the 24th is the WIMCO Tech Summit.
Okay, so I had that right. Okay.
Yeah.
I started to look it up. And then Yada is the first week of September. End of September is Data Center World Power. And then we have DCAC and Data Cloud in October.
You're right. So we have WIMCO Tech Summit. Then we have Yada September 8th through the 10th.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Data Cloud and DCAC, which is the same week, which I highly encourage people to go to both. You're going to get things out of both of these events. They're just great. I think both
right next to each other too. They happen next door to each other.
And I think some folks are planning a block party in between the two, so that we can kind of have a good little hangout spot. So you'll see us at both of those events.
And Data Center Power, I'm going to be speaking on a panel at that event.
Oh, that's right.
You and I will be on a panel there, but we also will be at that event as well.
Is that the first one of Data Center World Power?
Yeah, that one is, yes, I think it is, but it's at the end of September, week September 27th or something, I think.
Yeah, I think that is where is that actually going to be?
I think it's San Antonio.
Yeah, I want to say that if it's not the first one, it's the first one I've heard of, Data Center World Power. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, all about power.
September 29th through October 1st. DCpower.com has all the information for that. So that looks pretty cool.
Yeah, very exciting.
I am going to be
some of those.
Yeah, and we are launching our Infrastructure Mason Women. Well, we're launching a chapter in Brazil, Sao Paulo. And so I'm going down. We've got DCD, Virginia in November. I think it's the 4th is the Infrastructure Mason Women's luncheon for that. And then I jump on a plane and head to do this launch, which we're super excited about. If you haven't been tracking the LATAM market, there's like tons of activity, data center are booming. So I'm really excited about being a part of that. And that's another part of, we do have a Latinx community within Infrastructure Mason Women. So really excited about us getting that launch off the ground as well.
That's exciting. Yeah, that'll be fun. I love that. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. So yeah, we have that coming up, and then we're going to see some. Now, I know we've talked about how this platform that we've done for this podcast is really about bringing the voices and lifting the voices of others we don't typically hear. But we are going to have a few VIP guests. So when people see, hey, they're usually on, that goes against it. I said, no, it's about partnering with VIP guests who have a platform who can further help us elevate the voices of others.
And they're going to tell their stories too about how they're doing that work with,
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. Well, this was fun, Valerie. I guess this kind of wraps up our time together. We're going to try to do this every so often, just kind of reset, give our thoughts around how the podcast is going and the growth. You know, her and I are both growing too.
Yeah. I love this little pause. And since we're talking about, we have to end on the audacious question here. And for me, it's, Mara, I mean, what would be your advice when you're going to all these conferences? What are your tips and tricks you want to share with the audience that really make you successful when you go into these events? What do you do to plan and be successful and get the most out of it? Because I know a lot of times folks will just show up and flounder like, oh, I didn't really get anything out of that, or I didn't get to really meet the people I needed to meet.
So
I feel like there's a strategy to it.
Yeah. So as much as I love my tribe, when I go to events, I try to avoid hanging out with my tribe the entire time. So if you've got your 5 people that you event with, it is great to get into the event or get into a happy hour or whatever these breakouts are, but don't stick with them. You have to break out. And if you're scheduling breakfast and dinners with just these people, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You have to get new faces. You have to put yourself out there. I always go to an event with a couple of people that I have to meet that I'm like, I know they're going to be there. I need to spend time with them. And I don't always get to spend time with them for work, right? But do take some time. It's a great time to reconnect with friends and find out how's your life, how are your kids, all the things. But just make sure you're making time for other people that you don't normally get to talk to. So
yeah, meet someone new, right? I go through the list of faces that are speaking in advance that I know are speaking, and I'll reach out to them in advance and say, hey, can we connect? Maybe have coffee, connect, because this is the one time when we're all over the nation, right? Or maybe even all over the world for that matter. This is the one time I get to actually connect with a person face to face versus virtually.
Yeah.
And so I do kind of go through and make sure I'm connected on LinkedIn. And I do a little research, and I reach out to that person and ask if I could get a little time with them, and we'll schedule an event. They'll 9 out of 10 times they'll send me their phone number and say, text me, let's connect, and let's go have some coffee or lunch or dinner or something like that. So I do isolate, like, hey, who are those 2 or 3 people I want to make sure I get to meet face to face and really make a human connection with them. And then you have the people that are the tribe, but there's a lot of folks I don't ever get to see because most of them are on the East Coast. So trying to make sure I get a chance to just give everyone a hug.
You like to come out a week before, like DCD, Virginia, and just hang out a week with us. Yeah, I would say that is a good point. When you go to these events, go a day before and stay a day after, and just find out who's in that area. Maybe they're not coming to that event, but it's a great time to connect with local people too. So
it is such a great time to connect with local people, and especially if there's anything going on outside of that. So I know that when I came in the day before, we were able to just go to some different dinners and lunches and happy hours. I was actually able to get to know several people that I knew virtually or knew of, but had never really got to personally connect with them. And so for me, it's about the human connection and just kind of connecting with people in a face-to-face kind of way. And so that's kind of my tips and tricks, is really doing your research in advance and trying to know which one. Of course I have a plan. I have a plan on which events I want to go listen to because I want to learn from other people, or I want to cheer someone on. So I actually create a little planner in advance as well. So
I love
that.
One little trick that somebody taught me a long time ago, and it's if you go to an event and you're really seeking out, like, say, hey, I need to meet some meta folks at this event. Know who's showing up, write them a note. I know it sounds creepy. Write a note with your name and your contact information and why you want to meet with them. And when you see them, hand them the letter and be like, hey, I do have business cards. I want to give you this letter because I think you'll hopefully remember me.
Oh, I like that.
I would really like to carve out some time and get to know you. Here's my contact information. And they have to, it's in their hand. You lose business cards, right? They get stuffed at the bottom of but they're always going to find that letter. So do that at your next event. Write that person that you need to meet a love letter, not a love letter, but just write them a letter.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a really sweet personal tip. I love that. All right. Well, I've really enjoyed connecting and recapping and talking about the past and the future and a little bit more for our audience to know about us. And this has been fun.
Yeah, always fun.
And you know what? I want to end on and make sure we give a shout out to, because one of the things that we've worked through, Mara, is kind of talking about how do we keep this mic on? And it's really our sponsors, right? We've established our title sponsor. We're very excited.
Yeah, Cody's great. BCS Switchgear. The way that I really got to know him is he saw that I was doing a community dinner in Sterling, Virginia. There's an underserved community. Then they have these dinners every Tuesday, and I sign up for one every quarter. And Cody saw that I was doing that, and he was like, yeah, I want to do this for you. He just has a huge heart. So yeah. So thank you, BCS Switchgear. Check him out. Yeah.
Well, and empowering us through the next year. So we really appreciate him, and I appreciate you too. And until the next time.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
All right.
Cheers.
All right. See you.